So we have some time for questions, if there are any. We have a couple microphones here in the aisles, and if you want to identify yourself and ask your question, we'll start over here on the port side, and then we'll go to the starboard side and back and forth. Yes, sir.
Stanford University, an institution we all know and love, recently made its retirement incentives more generous. Are they going the wrong direction in trying to get us to retire?
First of all, I am a professor at, but not for, Stanford University. And my bet is that that's related to current recession and reduction in valuations of the endowment, but I don't know. Is that the right direction? No, that's the wrong direction. That would fail the environmental impact study test. There goes my honorarium, but there wasn't an honorarium anyway. Yes, sir.
How do you see the obesity problem that we are facing?
Well, the obesity problem is interesting because, in fact, it may be underlying the recent increase in disability that you see in younger populations. But, in fact, the disability rates in those populations are very, very low. So you get a 50% increase from 3% to 4.5% or something, but nothing like you see in the elderly. It could have a significant impact by 2050. One of my colleagues, J.L. Shansky, actually wrote a paper in the New England Journal, published a paper in the New England Journal, said, will life expectancy in the United States decrease in the 21st century because of obesity and the possibility of emerging infectious diseases, pandemics, et cetera. So I think it's a very significant problem, but the impact of obesity on your health decreases as you get older. So it's much less important, physicians know, it's much less important to get older people to lose weight than younger people. In fact, it may not be a good idea at all to get older people on a diet. Yes, sir.
Hi there. Thanks very much for your talk. My name is Jonathan Gelbart. I'm a master's student in sociology here. And one of the subjects that I'm working on, or looking to work on, is the effect of increased average age on policy making. Because, for example, older people have proven voting patterns such as decreased tendency to vote for education, for funding of education and things like that. Studies have been done on those things. And also an increased tendency to vote. So politicians tend to listen to older people. So you didn't really touch on that in your talk. I was wondering what you thought.
Well, I think, first I would refer you to a book that was published 2 years ago by Robert Binstock and James Schulz, S-C-H-U-L-Z. Binstock's at Case Western and Schulz is at Brandeis. The voting pattern issue in older persons is variable. If you, as I understand it, if you migrate from the upper Midwest to the east coast of Florida, you kind of vote for the school issues. West coast of Florida or Arizona, you tend not to. If you're in a community that you've been in for decades and you raised your kids in, older people are more likely to vote for referendum for schools in those communities than into communities in which they've been translocated or have translocated themselves late in life. I think that's clearly an issue. The core issue here is whether older people vote as a block. Is there an elderly vote? AARP would like you and congressmen to think there is, but the data for that are pretty weak. One piece of data is that, Ronald Reagan ran for governor. For president, he got 60% of the elderly vote. First thing he did was cap Social Security benefits, no cost of living increase for 4 years. He ran again, he got 65% of the elderly vote. So it's very hard to show one-on-one relationships. On the other hand, I think that may change. I think these patterns are not durable, they could be fragile. And I think the question of the clash between the generations could be a very real one. So I think you may be right. But it's hard to make a good scientific case. You can select a whole bunch of voting patterns to make your case, but then I could select a whole bunch of voting patterns on the other side. It's quite varied. That's my understanding of it. Take a look at Binstock and Schulz's book, though. I think you'd find it useful if you haven't seen it.
Thanks.
Sure. Yes.
Hi, my name is Susan Steiner-Saul, and I own a company called Silver Ride. We provide transportation activities and events for older adults who want to continue to be engaged after their driving retirement, as we call it. And as I've learned more and more about the field over the past 5 years growing this business, I've seen other models of what you showed around education, work, and leisure. And I'm interested in your opinion of, I don't know if you've ever seen Ken Dykewald's model, which has education, and then rather than work starting earlier and staying later, it has it in phases where you work and then you have a period of leisure and then you work and then you have a period of leisure.
Right.
So I'd be interested in your assessment of that and the whole idea of this third age and having reinventing yourself multiple times as you age rather than having one career.
Yeah, and Ken Dykewald, our colleague, has mentioned, is a psychologist who started a kind of a movement called the Age Wave. He's written some very popular books with respect to that and advised a number of organizations and corporations over the years. You know, I think his ideas are interesting as well. I think we need, 1,000 flowers to bloom here. I think we need some experiments to see what works and what doesn't. My concern about some of Ken's suggestions is that they might work for Ken or for Jack, but that, for the greater population of individuals, it's going to be very hard to get these kinds of recurrent cycles. But it might work. And look, I think we need something different than what we have. And I'll take almost anything. And I don't have enough data to indicate what works and what doesn't. We need to get communities and counties or states or cities or universities to start experimenting with it rather than retiring people earlier. Maybe this isn't the right university to start the experiment, but, experimenting with other ways to do this.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you.
As you said, Europe has aged before US. Can we learn something and apply from there? That's one part of the question. The other question is, all throughout, every time Europe is mentioned in even progressive media, everybody is saying they cannot sustain their social network, their social, the stuff that they have, the health care, the retirement, free education, etc. To me, for the last 40 years, they've been doing pretty well, so maybe there is something to learn there and not to be so afraid of social underpinning. The word escapes me. And, I think this is...
Well, two things. One, your second question, I think, Europe is a bunch of different countries. Countries populated with people with accents like yours don't have any problem with their sustainability and their solvency, okay? Some of the countries are in trouble, some of them aren't. There are reasons why some of them are in trouble, there are reasons some of them aren't. And we have lessons to learn. If you retire in the United States now, on average, you get Social Security 41% of your pre-retirement income. If you retire today in Italy, you get, on average, 104% of your pre-retirement income in Social Security. That's not sustainable. So, but there are lots of experiences, and in fact, the farther up you go in Europe, the better the experiences get. So you get up to Norway and Denmark and Sweden, and you see fabulous programs and very sustainable, solvent economies. So I'm not trying to criticize, but what we have is a natural experiment with 20 different countries, and some have done things better than others. As far as the first part of your question, the opportunity to gain from the older population their wisdom, there are things, and Dr. Carstensen, Professor Carstensen is an elite professor in psychology of aging, which I'm not. She really understands this, and she can tell you about it, but there are things that older people are better at than younger people. And there are roles that older people can play in our society where they can contribute very substantially. And we don't give them the opportunity to do that at this point. So I think there's a lot that we can change with respect to that. Thank you very much.